So when you put a brand new tank in your house, you come in with a bare bottom like this. Now, you'll notice there's a little bit of brown stuff on there. I had taken some quilt batting from some of my other tanks that I use in my filters, and I had tossed that in here a couple of days ago, and that's what got that basic brown coat in the tank here. And what that did was it started to bring in bacteria into this tank, a positive bacteria that you need in here in order for your tank to do well. And then I started to add this gravel, this sand here tonight, and then I'll add another layer of gravel here in a little while. So basically the goal is to add your layers of substrate on the bottom of the tank, and then that will cause a base that you can root your plants into. This is a really fine sand, so it's really good for Corydoras and for electric blue acaras and some of the other fish that you're going to see that I'm putting into the tanks here. Is you want this nice small sandy substance so that their fins and their barbels are not ruined. I know there's a little bit of a reflection tonight. I apologize for that, but this is how a tank looks as things are getting started up and beginning here, and soon it'll look like this other plant over there where there's lots of green plants and fish and everything like that. They'll be swimming around in there. Now you'll notice that the rock in there is pebbles, and so that's a little bit bigger for the fish's snouts to get stuck in, and so we're going to go with a smaller gravel and substrate this time around here in this tank to try and make things a little bit better. You'll notice that the heater is on, but because I took the lids off, we have some catching up to do. We're below temperature right now, and so we got to put the lids back on and get that going. So thanks so much for watching. Have a great day. So if you're not careful, after you add the substrate into your tank, you might get a cloudy problem. So the sand that's in here, I washed out 3 or 4 times in a 5-gallon bucket before putting into the tank, and I still ended up getting this sand cloud. This is why it's always good to have your fish out of the tank when adding the gravel into the tank. Again, it's really good to rinse it as well ahead of time. You'll notice there's 2 colors of gravel. So the other thing is called an Eco Complete, which means that it's fully set up and ready for having live bacteria, as well as having plants put into it and fish living in the tank. So if it wasn't cloudy right now, I'd be able to add some fish into the tank. We got the temperature turned up with the heaters, got new glass lids up and ready to go that we were talking about earlier. So that'll keep the heat into the tank and not let it escape. And we got the tank all cleaned up and ready to go. So we let the tank sit for about 7 days, just because this is one of the bigger tanks that I've ever done. I wanted to do it right. And then about 4 days in, we got the filter running, which you see back there behind the little village. And then we added the substrate after 7 days. And then after 2 days of adding substrate, it cleared up a lot. There's still a little bit of a cloud that's going on in this tank. It's not as clear as it could be, but I don't use carbon in my filters, and so it just naturally has to filter through those filters, and so that's just what is going to be in these tanks. But then once we had all the good bacteria that was in here, then we're able to add fish. And so the best thing to do is to add some fish that are hardy fish. So we started with these mollies, which are the ones that are swimming around the middle level, the top level of the tank. And then the bottom level here are Corydoras. And so we have a whole little group of Corydoras there. We got about 5 of them that are dotting around in the tank. They're the carpet cleaners. They're the ones that go around and clean the bottom part of your tank, and they dance around quite a bit. And then the other ones, the mollies, do a good job of kind of going up to the surface, cleaning up the surface a little bit and eating off of that, and just kind of chasing each other around the tank. But these fish are really good for cycling the tank and getting the bacteria going. And then down there we're going to add some of our cichlids, the blue acaras that we had over there, and the angelfish that we have over there. So right now they're growing out in a smaller tank, and then we'll move them into the big tank. Just a happy little place for these fish right now, just trying to get everything up and running. And we're going to see how the plants do. So the plants were added about the same day as the fish. And the goal with this tank, again, is to not have to provide CO2 at this time. I might make that switch here this year, but as of right now, we're trying to use fertilizer and just the natural light from the tanks and then the natural food from the fishes going to the bathroom. Now, one of the things we'll have to be worried about and look at is the thickness of the gravel there. You see that's a lot taller than some of my other tanks. It is also a lot smaller, so it's easier to root. But with the pressure of the water on 100 gallons, a lot of times you'll find that it's difficult for the plants to actually root and to grow. And so we're going to see how they do. They're all green right now because we just got them from the store. They're coming off of CO2 tanks where they have CO2 in there. So we're just going to see how they transition and how they do here in this tank. But we're super excited to get this one up and going and hoping to have some bigger fish and let some fish grow out in this tank. Well, here we are about 1 week later on Fishery with a Mission, and we're looking again at that 100-gallon tank. And you can see that the water is almost crystal clear now. That filter has done its job, taking the cloudiness away. We have a little bit of browning and wilting going on in the plants over here. So the wilting is that clear white looking thing that's taking place there on the edge of the leaves on this plant. And the browning, obviously the brown color there. The green ones in the back did fairly well. They stayed nice and tall. I trimmed the one on the far left to see which would do better. The brown kind of just fell off of it when it transferred in, and it's greened up real nicely here in the tank. You can see that the fish are really loving it, and we're glad to have them here with us. And I added the angelfish a couple of days later, as then the tank has been set up and cycled. The mollies are a little bit hardier fish. They can go into almost even a saltwater type tank if needed at times to help it get set up. And then some little guys came along. You may see a skating up there at the top, the teeny tiny little ones. Those are guppies, and I think they must have gotten scooped in with my angelfish. Obviously the angelfish are real small right now. We would call those about quarter size, nickel to quarter size. And then they'll grow up to be as big as most people's hands. And I'm planning to get some other big fish in here as well. Those corridors will grow up to almost a nice 3 inches. So super much loving the greenery that I have so far in this tank. There's only 1 dose of fertilizer from yesterday in here, so most of these plants are still doing well from the stores that they were purchased at. But the tank is happy and doing well, and I'm super excited that my 100-gallon is set up and ready to go, and we'll give you updates in the future if we get some bigger fish. Well, thanks again for following us on Fishing with a Mission. We're super excited to have you a part of this process of slowly building up this 100-gallon tank. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of learning curves. Like, for example, this was supposed to be my carpet grass, and it's very scraggly and not doing well so far in the tank. But we're super excited to have this tank here in the home, and hopefully you'll see new additions and videos here down the road where we're talking about that. But here's a little bit of greenery just to get you out of cold, snowy days and get you into the reminder of what spring is going to look like with all that greenness and the fresh new birth of animals coming out and living in the world that God has created. Thank you so much for following us here on Fishing with a Mission. We'll see you next time with our next video.